Welcome to the Heaven's Edge podcast, where we cover everything from the Christian life to entertainment, sports, and current events. Although we're heaven-bound, we'll be sure not to shy away from the edge, engaging in challenging topics. As ministry students living within the current culture, we aim to offer a unique perspective on the world, viewing it with a gospel vision. Now, introducing your hosts, Gavin Eberlin and Josh Gornicz.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's our pleasure to welcome you to another episode of the Heaven's Edge podcast. You're joined by your hosts, Josh Gornicz, as well as myself, Gavin Eberlin, as we dive into a conversation about how Christians should interact with sports. We hope you stick around and enjoy. The acclaimed greatest of all time, Thomas Baby, 31-9, 7 Super Bowl rings. I don't know how.
Ugh.
Literally, he wears Uggs. I got nothing else. I got nothing. The Kansas City Chiefs have not been held without a touchdown since facing the New York Giants in 2017.
Wow. How'd you figure that out?
It's the longest streak in the NFL. There's a stat everywhere. Patrick Mahomes has not played a game where team hasn't scored a touchdown. Crazy. The last time that they didn't score a touchdown, Alex Smith was their starting quarterback. Think about that.
I remember.
I have absolutely nothing to say.
It's very annoying. The worst part is that now we're just going to hear about Brady's greatness for a whole other offseason.
And it's near undeniable. He is the greatest of all time. I don't understand. I don't
know. I think you could say he's had the greatest career of all time, but I still hesitate to say that a football player could be the greatest because it's so team-oriented. I mean, he threw 3 picks in the AFC Championship or the NFC Championship, and they still got there.
My friend said, "Hey, give me $10,000. Give me the choice to keep that $10,000. I'll bet it on the Kansas City Chiefs." You know what he said he'd do? Bet it on the Kansas City Chiefs. You know what? As soon as the Super Bowl ended, give him 10,000 more bucks, okay? With a chance to keep it. Or bet on the Kansas City Chiefs if they had a rematch. You know what he said he'd do? Bet on the Kansas City Chiefs if they had a rematch.
I think I would too.
So tiring. I don't know. But, well, congrats to Tom Brady. You did it again. You stuck it to the Patriots. Say, hey, well, I can do it anywhere. Good for him. I hope he retires. He can be done. Unfortunately, I have the feeling that he's not going anywhere.
Why would he?
I don't know. Why would he?
I mean, he's got one of the best rosters in the league. He doesn't have to do too much to win. He's in the perfect spot for an old quarterback like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be excited to see Patrick Mahomes come back next year and hopefully can go on and have a great career. But yeah, that was a rough one. That was a doozy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, man.
Patrick Mahomes says that faith has always been a big thing with him. It was really encouraging for me to read this. I think it was right before the game. I'm glorifying him every single time I'm out there. I understand that he's given me a lot of blessings in my life, and I'm trying to maximize them and glorify him. It was really encouraging. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to go out and into Tampa Bay and play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the greatest of all time. It's a tough match. But it's really encouraging to have quarterbacks and just players out there who are kind of vouching and putting the Lord first. There's a reason and a purpose behind what they do. So I think that's really cool. Cool little note.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I am very ready for the New York Giants to become competitive again.
Next year, I think next year they could be a 9-10 win team.
Hopefully. You said they were the last team that held the Chiefs to under a touchdown, so maybe they'll be the team that steps up this year.
I'm going to say it. They're going to go to the wild card game next year. They're the best team in the division. That's a fact. Don't come at me with Taylor Heineke. Don't come at me with Eagles dumpster fire situation. Don't try to tell me that the Cowboys can break their curse. The Giants, it's their time. They've been through a rebuild.
It's been one heck of a rebuild, man.
One of the youngest teams in the NFL. I would dare say at least 5 Pro Bowl snubs with 2 active Pro Bowlers currently. The Giants, it's their time. That's all I have to say on that.
Hey, Barkley comes back. Jones starts playing well and doesn't get hurt. Could be something.
Oh, it'll be something. That's all I'm going to say. That's the only comment that I have. Josh, tell me, why are you a Giants fan? Just to keep my sanity, help me remind, like after all the struggle and the pain that we've endured, why in the world?
So I'm a Giants fan, and lately I've been questioning this. But I'm a Giants fan because of my family and the situation where my grandpa's a Giants fan, my dad's a Giants fan, my uncle's a Giants fan, my grandpa grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey, my grandmother's from Manhattan. And my dad grew up in Staten Island until he was a kid, and then they moved to Pennsylvania, and so that's why I'm a Giants fan in Pennsylvania. But it was awesome when I was a kid. I saw 2 Super Bowls by the time I was 12, and I was like, man, this is the life. It's awesome being a Giants fan. Since then, it is terrible being a Giants fan, man. They lose, especially when the ways they lose to the Eagles, man. The Eagles never beat the Giants. The Giants just fall apart every time against the Eagles. It's really annoying. And I hate it because I'm in PA and I live near all these Eagles fans who I had to witness them win a Super Bowl. But as the scriptures say, even the dogs find the scraps under the table at times.
At Duffy Robbins.
At Duffy Robbins. So, I don't know. I feel like it's been great in the past. I'm looking forward to them actually being good. Like, I'm sick of having to say, oh, maybe they'll go 8-8 this year. That would be great. I'm sick of that. I want to say, oh, maybe they'll go 12-4 this year. That would be great.
You know what? I'll tell you what it's taught me. For everyone out there, okay, as a Giants fan, you learn how to be loyal. We're not going anywhere. I literally, it's just year after year. The draft has become my favorite holiday. I look forward to the draft like a 4-year-old looks forward to Christmas morning. The magic, the potential, the opportunity. Just saying. Giants fans, they're just like they're going to be the best kind of people. Because if they're Giants fans every year, I don't know. It's a tough life. Kind of like Browns fans, except, they're over in the dog pound. But, man, I don't know.
It would be probably worse to be a Browns fan. Although not this year.
Not this year.
It was funny. My dad was telling me this past year, how the Golden State Warriors were one of the best teams for a long time. And they were just really fun to watch. They kind of, basketball ratings went skyrocketing because of them. But what's funny is all of these people in California then were Golden State fans, right? Jersey sales were going crazy. People were tuning in. They had, record viewerships of Golden State games. Then they win their last championship a couple years ago. Everybody leaves basically except Curry. And then people are hurt. And this past year, they're terrible. They're one of the worst. They might have been have the worst record in the NBA. Jersey sales stop completely. No one's watching anymore. And it's over, basically. No one cares about the... And so I think that as Giants fans, that's one of the most impressive things is that they're still packing stadiums. They're still selling tons of jerseys, tons of tickets. We're still watching every game when we can. And we're still getting excited when they if they beat a team. And I just think it's really funny how that shows.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Giants, they could have gone they were in the playoff race in week 17. That's all I got. I mean, and they won in week 17.
And if Evan Ingram doesn't drop that ball against the Eagles, they're in the playoffs.
It was like the lottery.
And he somehow got the Pro Bowl, so don't talk to me about that.
I remember in 5th grade, I had to write a paper on a National Football League player. I was in the library picking out books, right? I don't know why, there's a bunch of biographies on different NFL players. And there's this kid sitting across from me, and he's reading this book on this guy with this blue jersey, and his name is Elisha Manning. Okay. I was like, that's kind of neat. And then I proceeded to write my paper on Troy Polamalu because he's just a beast. But, but then I went back later and I just thought it was really, it's kind of a neat guy. And his brother seemed kind of neat. They mentioned him a couple of times, but I guess he made a pretty improbable play in a Super Bowl, somewhere. I think he almost sacked or something about a helmet and then a touchdown and a win against somebody, and in fifth grade, I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. And then I then proceeded to become a big time Giants fan, and they won another Super Bowl, and it just changed my whole life. I'm gonna tell you what. And at that point, I feel like I got a lot of joy from watching the Giants. But you told me the other day about a quote from Jordan Peterson. I thought it was kind of interesting. Josh, could you elaborate?
Yeah. So this is kind of what we're gonna talk about today is sports and Christian faith and how we should be relating to it, the good things and the bad things. But I couldn't find the exact quote. But I was listening to Jordan Peterson. I believe he's like a conservative self-help guy. He's a psychologist, and I think he writes books, and a lot of people have been able to kind of turn their lives around and get on the right track because they listen to him. I don't believe he's a Christian. At least he's not. His books aren't inherently Christian. But there was one thing that I was listening to, and he said this, and it kind of stuck with me. He said, athletes in America are the demigods of Greek mythology and Norse mythology. And they have taken their place in our minds psychologically, because human beings want something to gravitate towards. They want someone to be on their team. They want someone to gravitate towards and be against someone else in a competition kind of thing. And that's what they did with the Greek gods, right? They had Zeus, they had Nike, they had all these different things that they worshipped and they believed to be true, and they based their lives on. Same thing with Norse mythology. I don't know as much about that. I know they have Thor because Thor is awesome. Thor Ragnarok is one of my favorite movies. But they have the same kind of thing where they have created these gods. They worship them. They're all excited because they serve the god of thunder and Thor, or they serve, whatever specific god they like, and they sacrifice to them, and their lives revolve around these gods. And Jordan Peterson said that psychologically, we have the same thing in America, and it's in the form of famous sports figures, famous athletes. We gravitate towards Tom Brady, right? How many Patriots fans were Buccaneers fans this year? Not that that's a bad thing, except it's not really loyal to a team at that point. It's loyal to a player, which I'm loyal to a team. Although if Eli would have gone somewhere else, I probably would have rooted for them. But I feel that we have to be willing to examine ourselves and make sure that we're not actually worshiping these players and these teams and putting them in a place of godhood, demigodhood in our lives.
And it comes back to the question of identity. Are you putting your identity in them? Is your joy dependent on them? Like I could say, countless weeks, like I do get, Sunday, man, it's rough. Like it is rough. 4 or 5 o'clock after the 1 o'clock game rolls around, and it's demoralizing. But then Monday comes, and joy comes in the morning, I'll tell you. It's rough.
It's true. After the Super Bowl, I was talking with my uncle, and me and him were just talking about football and everything. And he was saying how when he was a kid, he used to get really, really angry if the Giants lost, especially in different ways that they've lost. And I can relate because I have been as well. But there's in my grandparents' house, there's places on the wall that have been spackled over where he's punched a hole in the wall. And it's actually not as rare as you think. When people do that, then people realize, I think. But one thing that he was talking about is he said when he started having kids, it kind of changed for him because now his anger, it wasn't just affecting him. It was now affecting his kids. And he was like, well, I don't want them to react like this. I don't want them to feel this anger. I don't want them to realize or to dread a Sunday because if the Giants lose, their dad's going to be angry. And so he said since he's become an adult, it's kind of changed for him. And since he's had a family especially, it's changed for him. And he's had to really question himself and look himself in the mirror and say, hey, I need to approach this a little bit differently. And I think that that's kind of happened with me. Since the Giants have been doing so bad, this actually might have been the best thing for me, because I used to get really, really mad about it. And now it's like, it's still there, like it's disappointed, but I've learned how to let go and move on with the rest of my day.
Yeah, and I know some people, if the Giants win, it's the best day and then week of their life. And then it turns completely upside down. If the Giants lose, it is the worst week of their life. I'm thinking like, I get it. I'm passionate through the roof.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really hard way to live. Like if that genuinely is the thing that your clock runs on, now if it's like, I think that there's a huge, benefit to being like, it's entertainment and it's really cool to take part in, and there can be very positive things to come from it. But like, if that's the only thing that your clock's running on, like right now, you're just looking forward to the draft and it is all you're thinking about every single day, I think that could be unhealthy. I
would agree. I think there's a middle line that we have to toe between passion and enjoyment in sports, especially when it's like me and it's a family thing that unites us. And I think that that's really cool. But we have to realize it's not the ultimate thing that unites us, or it can't be the ultimate thing that unites us, because that's Jesus's place.
Say that there's any pitfalls or dangers to cheering and really championing a sports team or athlete?
Well, it all depends on your mindset. It depends on how far you're going with it. If sports is something that you look forward to because it brings good memories from your childhood and it allows you to root for a team and it's connected and you just have a really good time entertained by it, there's a lot worse things you can be entertained by, I think. However, if it starts to become an obsession, if it starts to become I'm putting these sports before my family or before my relationships or before my relationship with God, if starting to control my emotions too much, where it's like, man, this is not good, then yeah, it starts to take that spot of the demigod, of something that we are worshiping.
Yeah.
There's a skit guys skit. Have you ever heard of the skit guys, Gavin?
I don't think I have.
Okay. So they're a Christian. They might not be as popular now, but when I was a kid, they were a Christian. I think there were two guys, and they would put on skits, and they were really talented. They would do these really funny skits, and they would present the Bible in really cool ways, and their skits would be really funny. But they did this one skit that's like chilling to the bone. And it says, it flashes up, and they basically say, humanity worships idols. And they start talking about these idols. They say they worship in stadiums, they worship in these cathedrals, and they paint their bodies, and they go crazy, and you wouldn't believe how. And while they're saying this, they have videos flashing of people in other countries, like African people, like sacrificing to their gods, or with weird piercings and worshiping these things, or they have videos of ancient peoples in these big cathedral like things sacrificing to their gods, and it just looks very savage. And then it says, "Don't relate. Try one more time," and it rewinds, and they say the exact same dialogue, and behind it, they play people in football stadiums painting their bodies, going crazy, crying, burning jerseys, and it's when I was a kid, I saw this. It was like, oh my goodness, that chilled me to the bone. It was crazy. I think it shows that there are people who can watch sports and do it healthily and do it well, but we always have to be checking ourselves. Does this have too much sway in our lives?
That is kind of chilling. I love the redemptive aspect of things. Well, because it's definitely in danger, but also I think to Pat Mahomes, how can you redeem something? I think it's the heart that you enter into it with. We had a conversation, or we were prompted to have a conversation. Would you rather, choose the Christian quarterback or the one who's just a very skilled athlete, but lacks that leadership of Christian backing? But when you can be a talented quarterback, but also come in it with a mentality and a heart that is solely built and founded on Christ, I think there's a really powerful redemptive aspect to what you're doing. and even us partaking in it, there is extremely large opportunity, I think, for Christ.
Yeah, I would agree. It's interesting that we talk about football because it's weird, but it has a Christian culture or subculture attached. Like you look at basketball, you look at baseball, and there are Christians in those sports for sure, and they glorify God in the way that they do it. But in football, specifically high school, college, and even the pros, there is a Christian culture that is prevalent. I mean, you look at the most famous one is probably Tebow, but that's because he was probably the most outspoken. But you look at all of these quarterbacks that are involved in their churches, that are honoring God and glorifying Him and claim to have a relationship with Christ and are doing these things. I mean, I hate to say it, but I look at the Eagles that championship year. There was a book written that it was called Birds of Prey, and it was Pray, and it was talking about how they had this Christian culture going on in their team that year. They were baptizing guys in the hotel pools, and they were, it was kind of revival going on, and that's awesome. And it's weird because in football, that's kind of always prevalent, and I wonder if that's because a lot of athletes come from the Southern Bible Belt area where that is just kind of a way of life. And it's a very good thing.
We'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break.
1 Corinthians 9:24 says, "Do you not know that in a race all runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it." I think this is such a cool verse because it's Paul writing a letter to the Corinthians, the church in Corinth. And he's writing to them and he's encouraging them to run the race that receives the prize. And he's referencing the Olympics here. This is Corinth, which is in the middle of Europe and right around where the Olympics would have been played and where it would have originated. And sports in that culture was a very big thing as well. And Paul is writing here, encouraging them with this. He's not literally encouraging them to participate in sports. But what he's doing is he's using the culture, he's using the sports to encourage his people that they are to run the race to obtain the prize, that they are to keep going, that they are to not give up, that they are to keep pursuing Jesus, keep pursuing relationship and intimacy with God. And the best part that we can take from this for this podcast and for our topic today is that he's using the sports to further the gospel. And I think that's how we have to look at it. Does our football obsession help push the gospel forward? Does it allow us to hang out with friends who we wouldn't be hanging out with?
That's good.
And be a Christian presence in their lives? Does it help us eventually, if we have families, does it help us to teach them how to respond to losing well, or how to win well, or how to trust in God, how to just do all of these things that are Christ-like, that we can help use the sports to further the kingdom in their hearts.
Good. Think about this redemptive aspect yet again. But we talked about purpose in the first week and identity in the following. So now with the mindset of my identity is in Christ and my purpose is given to me by Him, ordained by God. I think people need to remember that wherever they are, whatever their situation, Paul is also reminding and encouraging to say, hey, God has placed you here. He's given you a placement. He's given you a purpose. He's given you a passion. It may not be doing that desk job that you're grinding through every day. But if you approach that desk job, say, hey, I'm going to glorify God. I'm going to do my work as if I'm working unto Him. And I'm going to use this time to impact people that I would have never seen otherwise. Like, this is not just a time for me to grind and slug through my day. No. This is an opportunity of impact. This is an opportunity to reach other people. You can use your environment. I know that you may not feel that your placement is where you're called to, but you have an opportunity to go and live for Christ. Even in that environment, you could say, hey, I'm going to take up what I've been given. I'm going to come to it with an attitude of thanksgiving. I'm going to just try my best to live and make them question, Why is he so content where he is? And maybe, just maybe, that sparks a conversation. Coming to placement with a calling. I think it's something to think about.
Yeah. And I think that that's what athletes have to learn to do. High school athletes, college athletes, in their sport, in the locker room, in whatever they're doing. Football is a part of our culture. It's a part of life. It's not something that we need to shy away from. All sports. I'm using football because that's what we've been talking about, but all sports. And so it's something that we need to be able to take part in, or we can take part in, as long as we're using it to further the kingdom.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that some athletes, they feel called to go and to be an athlete. Like, that is what they are called to do by God to best further his purpose. And I think some, you could just see it. They succeed so well, at the culture and the community that God has inspired them to go and build. I mean, like Patrick Mahomes had mentioned that, there's a chapel every night before every game that they play. And they have a Bible study on Fridays. And, there's just this community that begins to foster when you operate inside of your calling. And I know we talked about purpose before this, why you were created. But I think calling operates as a kind of a subdivision and a part of your purpose, that it's, what are you doing? What is the Lord calling you to go and do? And of course, callings, they differ, and there's so many different layers and kinds of callings. Listening to the Lord and really seeking him, and how you are to live your life and what you are literally going to do in it. And next week, it's our goal to really go into that and explore that. Encourage you also. Seek God and listen to his voice. Listen to what he has for you. Thank you for sticking around, and we'll catch you next week.
Hey, thank you for taking time to listen to our podcast. We appreciate you for coming by. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss out on next week's conversation. Also, if you feel led, we encourage you to take a moment and share this on social media, along with even a star rating and review on wherever you may consume your podcast. If you'd like to offer your support while learning exclusive benefits and getting some sick merch, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/heavensedge. Your support enables us to go above and beyond our capabilities, maximizing the impact that we're going to have together while improving your experience. Until next week, peace and love.